Welcome to The Political Bridge, the podcast where we connect perspectives and dissect the most pressing issues facing our nation. I'm your host, Ada. Today we're diving into a critical and often contentious topic, immigration. Specifically, we'll be examining the Senate's proposed $70 billion funding package aimed at bolstering border enforcement. This substantial allocation has sparked intense debate, with proponents arguing it's a necessary step to secure our borders and manage migrant flows, while critics contend it fails to address the root causes of migration and may exacerbate humanitarian concerns. We'll explore whether this enforcement-first approach truly offers an effective, long-term solution. Joining me to navigate this complex discussion are Nico, our conservative voice, and Jordan, our progressive voice. Nico, let's start with your opening thoughts on this significant funding proposal.
Thank you, Ada. The $70 billion Senate package for border enforcement is not just effective, it's absolutely essential. We are facing an unprecedented crisis at our southern border, with millions of encounters in recent years. This funding provides critical resources for customs and border protection, for more agents, advanced surveillance technology, and improved infrastructure like physical barriers. The current president, President Trump, has consistently emphasized that national sovereignty begins with secure borders. Without robust enforcement, our immigration system is a free-for-all, straining public services and posing national security risks. Data from the Department of Homeland Security consistently shows that increased resources correlate with higher interdiction rates. We must prioritize law and order, deter illegal crossings, and ensure that those who enter our country do so legally and orderly. This package is a pragmatic, necessary investment in our national security and the integrity of our laws.
Nico, while I understand the concern for border security, pouring $70 billion into enforcement without addressing systemic issues is akin to treating a symptom while ignoring the disease. This enforcement-first approach has historically failed to curb migration effectively and instead leads to increased humanitarian crises. We've seen this play out for decades. More walls and agents simply push migrants into more dangerous routes, increasing deaths and exploitation. The vast majority of people arriving at our border are seeking asylum, fleeing violence, poverty, and political instability in their home countries, factors often exacerbated by climate change and geopolitical conflicts. A truly effective solution requires investing in processing capacity, humanitarian aid, and addressing root causes through diplomatic engagement and foreign aid. This package is an expensive, short-sighted, and ultimately inhumane response that will not solve the underlying challenges.
Both of you have laid out compelling initial arguments. Nico, you emphasize national security and law and order, citing the need for robust enforcement to manage the crisis. Jordan, you highlight the humanitarian aspect and the importance of addressing root causes, suggesting that enforcement alone is insufficient and potentially harmful. My first follow-up question for both of you is this: how do you reconcile the immediate need for border management, which many agree is chaotic, with the long-term complex factors driving migration? Is there a way to integrate both perspectives, or do you see them as fundamentally opposed in the context of this $70 billion package? Nico, let's hear your thoughts first.
Ada, the immediate need for border management is paramount. You cannot address long-term factors effectively if your sovereignty is compromised daily. The $70 billion package isn't just about walls. It includes funding for more immigration judges, detention facilities, and processing capabilities, which directly addresses the chaotic management Jordan mentioned. We must first establish control. Once we have a secure border and an orderly process, then we can have a more constructive conversation about root causes, but not before. To suggest that we should prioritize foreign aid or diplomatic solutions while our border is effectively open is fiscally irresponsible and undermines national security. The Biden administration's policies, which often de-emphasized enforcement, demonstrated that a lax approach only incentivizes more illegal crossings, creating more chaos, not less. This package is about restoring order, which is the prerequisite for any sustainable long-term solution.
Nico, I fundamentally disagree that enforcement must precede addressing root causes. In fact, ignoring the drivers of migration makes enforcement efforts a perpetual, expensive, and ultimately futile endeavor. The $70 billion package, while it may include some processing funds, is overwhelmingly skewed towards enforcement. For instance, a significant portion is dedicated to expanding ICE and CBP operations, not to increasing asylum officers or legal aid for vulnerable populations. The idea that a secure border will suddenly make root cause discussions constructive is a fallacy. People are not choosing to leave their homes and undertake perilous journeys because our border is open. They are fleeing untenable situations. Investing in enforcement without simultaneously addressing these factors is like building a higher dam while the upstream river continues to swell. We need a comprehensive approach that includes robust humanitarian aid, economic development in sending countries, and efficient, fair asylum processing at the border, not just more walls and agents.
It's clear there's a fundamental disagreement on the sequencing and emphasis of solutions. Nico, you argue for order first, then addressing root causes, while Jordan believes they must be tackled concurrently, with a significant shift away from enforcement-heavy strategies. My second follow-up question aims to steelman the opposing view. Nico, what is the strongest argument you can acknowledge from Jordan's progressive perspective regarding the limitations of an enforcement-only approach? And Jordan, what is the most compelling point you see in Nico's argument for increased border security funding, even if you ultimately disagree with its prioritization?
Ada, I can acknowledge that an enforcement-only approach, without any consideration for the underlying factors driving migration, would be incomplete. Jordan's point about people fleeing dire circumstances, such as violence or economic collapse, is valid. We cannot simply ignore the human element. However, my contention is that the current scale of illegal crossings, exacerbated by perceived lax enforcement, makes it impossible to address those root causes effectively or humanely at the border itself. Without control, any efforts to process asylum claims or provide aid become overwhelmed. So while I agree that root causes exist and need attention, the immediate, overwhelming challenge demands a secure border as the foundational step. This funding package, while enforcement-heavy, is designed to restore that necessary control, allowing for more structured engagement with those deeper issues in the future.
Nico, I can certainly see the pragmatic argument for ensuring some level of order and control at the border, especially given the current numbers. The sheer volume of arrivals does create logistical and humanitarian challenges that need to be managed, and some funding for improved processing efficiency, even within an enforcement framework, could be beneficial. My concern isn't with the concept of an orderly border, but with the disproportionate focus on punitive enforcement over comprehensive solutions. I agree that chaos isn't desirable for anyone, including migrants. However, the current president's administration has continued to prioritize deterrence through enforcement, which often leads to more dangerous crossings and backlogs, rather than truly managing the flow. While I disagree with the scale and emphasis, the idea of managing the border effectively to ensure safety and efficiency for all involved is a point I can concede has merit.
Thank you, Nico and Jordan, for that insightful exchange. It's clear that while there are points of convergence on the need for order, the path to achieving it and the role of enforcement versus humanitarian and systemic solutions remain deeply divided. The Senate's $70 billion package represents a significant investment in one particular approach, and as we've heard today, its effectiveness is subject to intense debate. We've explored the arguments for prioritizing national security and law and order, as well as the calls for a more compassionate, root cause-focused strategy. This discussion highlights the profound complexities of immigration policy and the challenges in finding common ground. We encourage our listeners to research this package further, understand its components, and consider how it aligns with their vision for our nation's immigration system. Thank you for tuning in to The Political Bridge. We'll see you next time.